Jesus Christ, is there really anything else that could go wrong? The worst period of my life seems to have no end. Of course, things can't go downhill, and I need to get a break. Work has become a daily test of survival, and the person I trusted more than anyone else is causing me the most grief. Perhaps I should explain how this all started. Jim Anderson met my wife Kate on my first day of work at Chisholm Engineering. I was 18 years old and nervously walked into my first day of work a few weeks after my GCSEs. I was a good student and could have gone to college, but I knew it wasn't for me. I had already studied enough, and my parents couldn't afford to support me through 3 years of university. Kate was an HR assistant helping the company onboard employees and was absolutely amazing. It took me 3 months to work up the courage to ask her out. I was sure that the refusal would be soft. But she didn't refuse. She actually said yes and asked where we were going. I was so sure that she would reject me that I didn't even think about where to go. 20 years passed and, amazingly, we both still worked for the same company and were happily married for 18 of those years. I headed the project management team, while Kate had a meteoric rise to become HR director at a large engineering plant. We had 2 wonderful children, 16-year-old Amy and 14-year-old Jack, who had everything going for them, a wonderful home and a comfortable lifestyle. John Newcomb has been my best friend since elementary school. In high school, I started dating Rob Turner and remained friends, and a few years later, Rob's younger brother, Paul, joined us. Paul was the only bachelor among us. The rest were married, and all the wives were close, having known each other for many years. Paul was more focused on his career than the rest of us. I recommended our company to him and was very pleased when he received the position of Director of Operations. It was a very well-paid job, and we celebrated accordingly. Paul explained that he was surprised to receive it since he was an old man. Chisholm gave him a lot of trouble during the interview. 6 months later, on a Friday night, the 4 of us were having a few pints, and I mentioned that Kate had been a little out of sorts and distracted lately. I brought this up because I thought the other Wivies might have told my friends something, especially if it was something medical. Nothing was said. The guys were concerned and agreed that this was very unusual for Katie. I admitted that the thought of an affair had crossed my mind. The guys didn't believe that this could be true, but they asked what made me think so. It was hard for me to explain other than that something was wrong. Until this moment, Paul had been silent, but then he suddenly began to persistently defend my wife, saying that he was working with Kate and that there was absolutely no way for her to even look at another guy. Moreover, I was a complete idiot if I thought that she would. It was almost a tirade, and I thought it was very strange. Paul defended her too fiercely. When I looked around, I wasn't the only one who was surprised. I remembered that he often flirted with Kate, a lot of jokes and small touches, and since he worked at the firm, they went on business trips a couple of times. I stared at him, trying to understand the situation. He did not react at all, but began to look guilty and was extremely agitated. Rob knew him better than anyone, and he caught it too. He looked at his younger brother. "Please tell me that you are not that stupid." At the same time, I almost shouted, "So when will you start to sleep with my wife?" Chaos reigned. We both stood there. I tried to attack him. John and Rob just managed to keep us at a distance. Rob dragged his little brother outside and told him to fuck off. "But I'm your brother. I'm serious. Get out before I beat you up myself. You're a dumb, arrogant asshole." John and Slave tried to tell me that maybe things weren't as bad as I thought, and that I needed to talk to Kate to find out the truth. I agreed and went home. When I arrived, Kate was sitting at the kitchen table crying. "I understand that Paul called to warn you. Is this true?" Kate didn't deny it, but downplayed, saying it was not an affair. Allegedly, they played pranks during a joint business trip. I've done enough digging to confirm that fooling around is sex. She swore it was a one-time affair fueled by alcohol, but I wasn't convinced. Rob was genuinely protective of her, and I felt like there was more to it than that. I admit, my reaction was adamant. I didn't care if it happened once or 100 times. Betrayal is betrayal, and I was completely stunned. Kate couldn't explain why she did this, and her apology seemed meaningless. In the months that followed, we separated and were heading towards divorce, and that was bad enough, but to make things worse, Kate started dating Paul again. This confirmed my suspicions that everything was not just a one-time thing. The beer drinking with John and Rob stopped. It was awkward that their wives were friends with Kate. They invited me, but I was not in the mood for company, and I didn't have much money. I also thought that they would communicate as a group, especially since Paul is Rob's brother. Losing my wife to one of my best friends was really very upsetting. It felt like I was getting a divorce from my whole life. Kate got custody of our 2 children and kept our home. I knew Paul was spending time there. Despite this, I was still paying half the mortgage plus child support. All I could afford was a small apartment in the shitty end of town. This did not help with the children. They were not very keen to stay with me and wanted to spend time with their friends who lived not far from our old house. At first, I took them out for a few days at a time, spending all my spare money on trips we all loved and took regularly since they were little. Then conflicts began over time. Either they were going on vacation to the city with Kate and Paul, then on a school excursion, then to visit friends. An endless list of excuses. As a result, I hardly saw them for the last 2 months and missed them very much. If it weren't for their sport, I might have completely lost touch with them. I always followed their sporting activities and coached both of them in soccer. Kate had never attended them, preferring to give herself free time, but now both she and Paul attended them all. At halftime of Amy's soccer game, I asked Kate why she was there. She was indignant, saying that these were her children. "You didn't care about this before?" "Well, I thought it would be useful for the children to provide them with support during our separation. As long as you do it for them, and not for yourself, or to prove that you are right. You wouldn't do anything as petty as try to rub my face in this with your boyfriend. Don't be funny. Everything is over between us, and now I'm not interested in you at all." Having said this, she hugged Paul and pressed herself against him. I left, biting my lip once again. The work was simply torture. I had to see Kate and Turner regularly. The worst part was the endless barrage of comments from the guys on his team. They seemed to enjoy teasing me. I knew they were looking for a reaction, and I was just trying to control myself. Luckily, my team was a lifesaver, especially a new hire named Josh. He was an ex-military man in his early 20s who had lost both legs. He didn't explain what happened, and I didn't ask. Depending on the degree of pain, he used either prosthetics or shortened versions, which he called shorties. He was very reserved and quiet, mostly keeping to himself. But when it came to logistics, he was a Jedi master. I knew of no one better who could retain so much information and respond so effectively to complex changes. One day I was surprised when he quietly asked why I put up with so much crap. I tried to talk about my sorrows and shit in life and immediately felt stupid considering everything he must be dealing with. He looked at me with a serious expression on his face. "It all comes down to a simple choice. Live or die." "Was this instilled in you in the army?" He started laughing uncontrollably. "No way. This is too deep. This is a quote that I ripped from the movie The Shawshank Redemption. The version for the British infantry would have sounded like this. Just get it over with, asshole." I joined in his laughter, realizing that I hadn't laughed properly in months. Finally, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel when Marie, an accountant at the firm, asked me out on a date. I hadn't even thought about dating, and she took me by surprise. I had known her for many years and knew that she was divorced, and she was a wonderful person. We dated a few times until Kate caught wind of it. I heard rumors that Kate was defaming her and calling her a woman of easy virtue, but nothing could be proven. Marie came to meet the children, but they behaved absolutely terribly. At first, they ignored her, and then began to retell their mother's opinion about her. I was shocked by their behavior and told them so. Marie was a gentle person and became very upset, and then insisted on leaving despite my apologies. I told the children to go home to their mother, while at the same time, I tried my best to control my anger. I called Marie many times, and when she finally answered the phone, She explained that she did not want to create problems in my family and that it was better to stop now than later. I was completely devastated. I think I've had enough. No matter how hard I tried to do the right thing, they kept shitting on me from a great height. I might as well give up. And then I remembered Josh's comments. I was trying to find something positive in my life when Amy told me that Paul had promised to buy her a car and driving lessons for her 17th birthday. I was furious, but said I needed to discuss this with her mother first. Amy left, angry again. I called Kate and asked how my 16-year-old daughter was going to get a car, and I didn't know anything about it. You know, I wanted to teach the children to drive, and I, of course, don't want her to have her own car yet. Why not? It's a wonderful thing for Paul. Don't be upset just because you can't afford it. So, will you be okay with her going out to parties with her friends? Do you have any idea how many road accidents happen to children that age? I wanted to make it easy for Amy. Let her use our cars until she was older and we can trust her. Oh, well, no, I didn't think about that. I think it will cause concern. And since when have I been removed from all decisions regarding children in favor of your boyfriend? I am their guardian. That's wrong. We are both guardians. It just so happens that they live with you. Next time you tell me that bastard wants to adopt them. Don't be ridiculous. I agree we should have asked you first, but I'll tell her we won't do that. Great. So I'll be the bad guy again, ruining her chances of getting a car, and Paul will be the hero. Are you two deliberately trying to create problems between me and Amy, or is it just your talent? Of course not. Paul is just trying to support me and get closer to the children. Tell him to fuck off. He has you and, it seems, my children, but I am their father. I have the right to participate in decision-making. I'm sorry. Okay. These words did not match her tone, which sounded dismissive. How many times are you going to apologize after making selfish decisions? Try to change your actions. Think about someone else besides yourself. You and Turner are definitely made for each other. You are like two peas in a pod. What does it mean? It sounds like you're jealous, Jim. You're the one who left me, remember? If you hadn't, we'd still be making these decisions together. And you were the one who lost everything. There's no point in bringing this shit up again. We have to do what's right for the kids. I don't want them to be spoiled. They should earn money and be independent. Amy can work part-time if she wants to save up for a car, and then we can help her, and not just give her everything on a silver platter. I was angered by Kate's remark that I couldn't afford to help. This was because I was still paying my mortgage and child support. It was infuriating, especially since Turner seemed to spend a lot of time there. Trying to deal with Kate was like banging your head against the wall over and over again and getting the same result. I saved money and figured I could afford it. I called Kate to make sure the kids would be there on Friday to pick them up for the weekend. Surprise, surprise. They planned a trip and forgot to tell me. I had to threaten her with family court before she agreed that I could come on Friday to see them before they left on Saturday afternoon. I stood in our old kitchen and remembered happy days. The children were sitting at the table, and Kate, like in the good old days, stood at the bench. I proposed a vacation that we had been planning as a family for many years, a trip to Europe in the summer. Amy wanted to see as many European capitals as possible, and Jack wanted to climb the Via Ferrata, protected climbing route in the Alps, and try extreme sports in the Alps. It wouldn't be cheap, but I was willing to spend everything I had and borrow the rest. The children were full of enthusiasm and began discussing different places we could visit. Finally positive, they responded the way I hoped they would. I saw Kate looking thoughtful. It was supposed to be our family holiday, Jim. We planned it together. Well, now we can't do it together, and this is probably the last chance we have before Amy goes on vacation with her friends. At that moment, Paul walked into the kitchen as if he were the boss. Jack excitedly told him about the trip. Paul nodded and said, "That sounded great," then added, "I think we can arrange our vacation another time." All three turned to him in unison and asked, "What vacation?" "Well, I was thinking about a summer trip around the United States. You choose your itinerary, but it could include Disney, and then hop over to the West Coast, visit Los Angeles, and the Pacific Coast Highway. Amy interrupted. My God, this would be an amazing trip. Maybe we'll stop by New York? I don't see any reason why not. We could pop in there for a few days to break up flights back to the UK. Jack went straight to questions about the rides at Universal and whether they could go to Busch Gardens or Six Flags. He loved all the thrill rides. I have never hated him more than I did at that moment. He knew he had me in his hands, and I could hardly insist on a lesser trip when they were so excited. I stood up and left the kitchen, doubting that anyone had noticed my departure. I had just reached the door of my car when Kate caught up with me. Jim, I'm sorry about your trip. Answer me one question honestly, Kate. Is this the first time you've heard about this vacation? Well, yes. I don't think Paul had the opportunity to tell us about him. I'm sorry that it contradicts your idea. Jesus, Kate, you're not that stupid. He just made it up on the spot, and I can guarantee nothing is booked. He takes my children from me, and you help him. What the hell did I do to deserve this? I'm sure this is an innocent conflict. Finally, I've had enough. You keep asking for forgiveness, and then you do the same thing again. So this is what will happen. Tell your boyfriend this. Next time I have even the slightest problem with access or withdrawal from raising my children, I will address the issue with him directly. Are you really threatening us, Jim? Talking to you is like peeing in the wind, so yeah, I'll try a different tactic and live with the consequences. You won't harm us. Maybe not you, although you deserve it. But on the other hand, he is due some retribution. You and he should think twice about putting someone in a position where they have nothing to lose, and that's exactly what you put me in. I looked up and saw Paul standing at the door. I half expected him to attack me, he was bigger after all, but he just disappeared into the house. I saw the disappointed look on Kate's face, but she quickly hid it. You see, a real man does not resort to threats of violence. No, it looks like he ran away. I calmed myself and looked at Kate again. You're trying to win them over and push me away. These are my children, not his. I'd like to think I'm a good father. You should want me to be involved in their lives and not play pathetic games. Kate seemed speechless. It's not like that. This shouldn't be a rivalry, but let's face it. You win, I lose. You have a house, money, our friends, a rich guy, and children. Your victory doesn't mean I have to lose every time, Kate. The old Kate would have realized that much sooner than I did. She just stood there with her mouth open, not saying a word. For God's sake, I give up. I want to talk to the kids again tomorrow without this idiot. I jumped in the car and sped off, leaving Kate standing there looking like a goldfish. Before entering the house, I made sure that Turner was not there. The kids were lounging on the sofa in our old living room, looking like it was a big effort on their part, and Kate was standing in the doorway. Don't worry, I won't take up much of your time. There was no verbal response, but Jack managed to look up at me. I know the breakup is hard for both of you, and I wanted to remind you how much I love you, and so does your mom, and that will never change. Kate looked surprised that I mentioned her. But I don't understand what's happening to you. Lately, I can hardly recognize you. You are great kids, but now you have this snotty attitude, like nothing is good enough. I love you madly, but I deserve better than to be a laughingstock. If you want to continue living with your mother and Paul, I will back down. If you want stuff and big celebrations, Paul is your man. What I won't do is show up every weekend to listen to lame excuses about how busy you are. Kate tried to interrupt. I think it's unlikely. Yes, I have heard enough of what you think, and I am talking to my children, perhaps for the last time. I can't buy you what he can buy, but I'd still like to spend time with both of you, play sports, go hiking, whatever you want. I know it's not Florida or anywhere, but we would be together and you both would be leaving for college soon. Still no response other than an awkward glance and a fidgety movement. The way you behaved towards Marie was unforgivable. What gives you the right to treat someone like that? This is not how we raised you. I have never been so ashamed of my family. I hope you are all happy. She will have nothing to do with me. Kate got angry. Well, she wasn't good enough. Really, Kate? What did she do to you? She's a wonderful person, and all she did was agree to date me. You slept with your lover when we were married, and I never blamed him. But you're great. You scared her off so much that she was worried about my psycho ex-wife and children. I winced, realizing that I had said all this and cursed in front of the children. Amy and Jack looked shocked. This information seemed to be a revelation for them. I turned to Kate. And here's another thing. Thanks to Turner rubbing my lack of funds in my face, I checked with the child support agency, and they think I should have taken into account the mortgage for part of the alimony. So wait for an assessment and review. Maybe the lover can step forward and pay for my house, which he seems to live in. Amy raised her head and looked at her mother. Dad is still paying. Her voice broke, and Kate reverted to her goldfish image, and the kids didn't look much better. It didn't look like I'd get a response from any of them. I stood up again in frustration, muttered something about letting me know, and walked away. Returning to your wretched apartment, I wondered if I could afford to move. I forgot to mention to Kate that my lawyer advised me to continue paying the mortgage and reduce child support. This guaranteed a roof over my children's heads, but he thought it might be a good investment as property prices were soaring. And when Jack leaves home in a few years, she will either have to sell or buy me out. The phone rang, and it was Amy. I wondered what the next misfortune in my life would be. I answered. Amy said she had Jack on speakerphone and spoke hastily. We found out that we owe you 6 days off and 4 weeks of vacation, and decided to ask if you still want to tour Europe this summer, and include the Black Forest, see the Alps, and drive through Italy. Her words flowed out in a nervous stream. Do you remember these places? Of course, we've been talking about this for years, and it should be a lot warmer there than in Scotland. And Dad? Well, we're sorry for the way we acted. Mom never said it was she who changed. We thought it was you, and that it had to be with Marie. And Paul sounded like he was paying for everything after you left us. I don't care if I can get my kids back. Jack joined. You're wrong about Paul. We don't really like him. He's a jerk. To be honest, I tried not to laugh. Jack, that's not the impression you made. We thought that if you couldn't date us, then that you could come back. That will never happen, Jack. It's over between me and your mom. She's gone. But I want to be there for both of you. Amy picked up from Jack. The thing is, Dad, we think Mom feels the same way. He doesn't really come here that often, but he does show up if you're coming to pick us up. They argue a lot, and often because of you. It's hard for me to believe this. Your mother was just Well, it's been difficult to communicate with her since we broke up. I would even say that she hates me. I don't think so, Dad. I think she knows she made a mistake. I was sitting in Kate's HR office at work. My nose was bloody. Kate was furious when she saw me. Lord Jim, a fight at work is a gross violation of discipline. I will be forced to fire you. What's the matter? Are you worried that you'll lose your alimony? This is pathetic. Grown men fighting. Do you understand that we had to call an ambulance for Bob? Okay. He deserved it. I think I did pretty well considering there were 3 of them. Grow up, Jim. This is a complete disaster. Everything is so bad that the old man will come now. Then Turner burst in, and I tried not to smile, looking at his swollen lip and bruised cheek. He immediately started screaming that he and half of his team had been attacked, demanding to call the police and report the attack and to fire me immediately. I looked at Kate. You want to know what really happened before you fire me? I mean, at the end of the day, it's still your job. A deep voice echoed through the room. I agree. I turned around and saw an old man, Chisuma, chairman of the board of directors and founder of Chisholm Engineering. He rarely visited the factory these days, but he still had an impressive appearance and a reputation to match. Strangely, Josh was standing next to him. Turner launched into an explanation. It was an unprovoked attack on me and 2 of my team in the dining room. Unprovoked an attack by 1 person on 3 people seems a little strange, don't you think? So what happened, Jim? Well, I probably swung first, but since I was in the minority, I wasn't going to wait. It seemed to me that Chisholm suppressed a smile. Kate continued, We will have no choice but to fire you and call the police, Jim. You already threatened Paul. I heard it myself. None of this can justify the attack. Aren't you going to ask what triggered this? I think it's jealousy of my relationship with Paul. No, it was months of persecution on his part and on the part of the guys from his department. Paul was almost out of breath. This is complete nonsense and just a pathetic excuse. Then Josh spoke up. I can confirm that everything Jim said is true. Paul looked at him with contempt. Who the hell are you? If you know what's best for you, then don't poke your nose into other people's affairs. Josh is my grandson, answered Chisholm, and I trust him more than someone like you. I got over my surprise and took out my phone, scrolled back, and pressed play. Hey, Cookie, our boss was late this morning. He probably did a good check on your missus. Everyone in the room felt uneasy. I saw Kate look at Turner. I scrolled further down the post again. You know that she slept with him for several months before you broke up. Did you know? Are you one of those people who likes to watch how his wife is treated? Kate's face turned crimson, and Turner shouted, This is complete nonsense. I jumped forward again, and the next voice was Turner. It's a shame you were late for work all those times, Jim, and didn't get the manager position. I looked at Kate. Have you ever seen me late for work? Even once in all the time we've been here? He blocked it and told me about it, telling me to get away because it would happen every time. I switched to the recording from the dining room. It was Bob Marsden's voice. Paul says she's great in bed. Once he gets her going, we'll have a little party with all the guys. Maybe we can even get that sweet little girl of yours. There were sounds of a scuffle and a fight, after which the recording was interrupted. That was the last comment I responded to. You're still the mother of my children, and the mention of Amy, well. Kate looked at Turner, and he shuddered awkwardly. I didn't know that idiot Bob was going to say that. He was just trying to piss him off. Old Man Chisholm spoke. Officially, all participants are suspended from work during the investigation and disciplinary hearings. Unofficially, Turner, get out of my building and take your cronies with you. Anyone who calls the police will never work in this industry again. You've already stayed too long. The worst assignment in my life. Don't even think about competing with me. You will regret it. He nodded to the guard outside the door, who entered and then ushered Turner out. Chisholm turned to me. In light of all this, I would say you handled it well, but you should have come to me. Go home, Jim. Clean yourself up. Kate, we need to talk. I can't believe this kind of behavior went unnoticed, not even considering your role in this matter. As the HR director, you should have been aware of what was happening. Tears rolled down Kate's cheeks. You know that's not true, Jim. It didn't happen for several months, but once, and I regretted it as soon as it happened. I walked out with Josh, thanked him for his support and advice, and offered to buy him a pint or more. I would love to, but on Sunday, I have to go to the regiment. Usually, I just go to the mountains to be in silence. But they attracted me to something official. No problem, then next time. And what about the fact that the old man is your grandfather? I didn't want to talk about it or use it to my advantage. I was going to tell him about your problems, but I decided that you should find a solution yourself, and then I will help. In the end, whoever sheds his blood with me today will be my brother. I started laughing. Now I know it's an old army quote, if you count Shakespeare and Henry V. Josh grinned. This is the one from the Gang of Brothers. They used it in officer training. For others, it was too pompous. That evening, Kate came to my apartment and I reluctantly let me in, asking what happened in the Chisholm. He confirmed that Paul and the two people involved in the fight would be fired. Other members of the team admitted to harassing you and said that Paul had talked them into it. I was reprimanded and given a final written warning. Are they going to go to the police about the fight? No. The guys admitted to the persecution and want to hush everything up. They claim that it was just a disagreement that got out of control. Did you talk to Turner? Ask him about the reasons. He wanted to get rid of you because he thought I was still in love with you. He said that all the conversations were aimed at getting you to break down and leave your job, but you didn't take the bait. You simply ignored them. He's crazy. If you love someone, you don't cheat on him. You're lying to him and don't treat him like crap. You've been treating me like crap for months now. I'd even say you enjoy hurting me." Kate began to sob hysterically. "None of this should have happened. It was a mistake. You shouldn't have found out about it, and you shouldn't have left me everything that could have gone wrong. I thought that if you missed the kids and your life turned into trash, you would give me another chance. But that didn't happen. Paul was just trying to make you jealous more than anything else. I don't have any real feelings for him. So you were a bitch because you wanted me back. Seriously? Take responsibility for your actions, Kate. It's all your fault. I have no idea who you are. The woman I married would never do such things. She was kind and caring. Where did she go? I lost everything when I realized that you wouldn't come back, and with the divorce, I decided that I had to see it through to the end. The kids, our friends, and my family couldn't believe what I did. John and Slave refused to be in the same room with us. I didn't see their wives and families for months. I needed to prove that everything would work out with him, otherwise I would throw everything away. I had to prove that I made the right decision and that he was the better man. My life with Paul was supposed to be perfect, and the more I begged you, the better my decisions looked. I tried to create the appearance of a love relationship, but it was not at all like that. He was arrogant and selfish, but by then, there was no turning back. What a fucking mess. And you got the kids involved in all this crap. I'm so sorry. I should have tried to fix everything, but I had no idea how. I didn't realize how much it affected your relationship with them. Great. Another apology. I heard your words. I will change my actions, and I will no longer need to apologize. At least it's all over with him. He's gone. And I need you, just like the children. They are very angry with me. I thought maybe we could try again. I never stopped loving you. I couldn't believe it. I was so sure that she hated me that it gave me reason to think. But the pause was short-lived. There's no turning back, Kate, not for me. The connection and trust we had is gone. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just trying my best to cope with the situation and get my life back on track. On Sunday morning, I met John and Rob for a pint. They chided me for not answering all their calls and messages. I tried to explain why. The wives were friendly and, after all, Paul was Rob's brother. Rob laughed. He is not my brother. I haven't spoken to that creep since that night in the pub, and that's a good thing. Otherwise, I would have blown his mind. John explained that at first the couple did not see Kate often, but now they communicate again and say that Kate regrets everything. She thinks that if she hadn't started dating Paul again and had been more sensible, we might have gotten back together. I wasn't sure about it, but I was sure that it was nice to talk to my friends again. We started talking about other events in our lives when I accidentally glanced at the TV screen. There, in full Royal Fusiliers dress uniform, stood Josh, laying mourning at the cenotaph before members of the royal family and the great and good countries. He had many medals on his chest. I turned up the volume to hear commentary explaining how Josh won the Victoria Cross by rescuing fellow Fusiliers under heavy fire and making it back repeatedly before being knocked unconscious by a rocket-propelled grenade. They went on to talk about how he fought for his recovery. I was stunned. I had no idea what Josh and the others had to face. My plight paled in comparison. In fact, contrary to stories, once Kate stopped being a bitch, life got better. I saw the kids more than I had planned, plus all the sporting events. It was unofficial joint custody. They stayed whenever they wanted and were always happy to see me. Child support reduced the amount I was paying to offset the mortgage as they had suggested. I was promoted at work and paid a huge bonus. Chisholm said he wants to avoid claims of harassment or constructive dismissal. I returned to old hobbies and planned to travel more. I was shocked when Marie showed up at my new terraced cottage. We hadn't spoken for months, and I didn't think she knew where I lived. Somewhat hesitantly, I invited her in. I'm here at the request of Amy and Jack, Jim. They apologized and explained everything. Amy mentioned that you're not dating anyone. How did they even know how to contact you? I suspect that Kate gave them my number. I called her. She confirmed the children's words and admitted that you both need to move on with your lives. Everything was getting surreal. Both your children and your ex-wife seem to think that you are the best thing since sliced bread, and that I would be an idiot not to date you. Sliced bread, that's too much, don't you think? It may be the best thing since the steam engine, although, sorry, it's an engineering thing. I would prefer a calculator or a computer. I'm an accountant, after all. Anyway, I'd like to find out for myself, Jim. Yes, I would like that too, Marie. Very much. We started dating again, and our relationship developed. First, it was friendship and company, and then passion and intimacy, everything that money can't buy. Who knows where we will end up, but so far everything is going well. I was just lucky, maybe, but I like to think that I stopped acting like a victim and, to some extent, created my own luck. I stopped putting up with the crap other people give me and learned to stand up for myself again, and the results have been great so far. However, I will never take it for granted. Life has a funny habit of tripping you up when you least expect it. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.